Thank you guys again for letting me be part of your weekend. I don't know how common you guys do Friday, Saturday, Sunday stuff, but that's an accommodation to my schedule, and I really appreciate you guys going out on a limb and doing a weekend seminar. I appreciate that. As we started this morning, somebody said that sometimes during your Bible class hour, you use that for some Q&A. Well, I'll make a couple of introductory comments, and then if anything that we've said you'd like to ask questions on, or if you need clarification on something or just something I hadn't said you want to know about, we'll let the gentleman with the microphones take some questions. My favorite answer is I don't know. And the B part of that is you don't either. So if you know, I reserve the right to pass on a question that I'm not qualified to answer. But to start out this morning, if you want to turn in your Bibles, we'll look at two verses. I'm not going to do an exposition of the verses, just want to bring them to attention. If you'll start in John chapter 1. I like to go to intensives. If I get a chance to go to a workshop, I've got a lot of really weird hobbies. I don't get to go to the gym every week, but if somebody comes in from out of town and does a seminar I play around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, mainly for mobility, but I teach a class for the police department. I'm one of their defensive tactics instructors, and we teach a pretty watered-down version of the real thing. But I don't get to go to the gym every week, and everybody at the gym is twice my size and half my age, and so it's hard for me to go to the gym. But if one of those well-known guys comes into town and will do a 4-hour instruction, I'll go to those intensives. I like to do that. When I was a younger man, I would get interested in something, and I would call somebody. Like I called a tree surgeon one time and said, "Hey, I'll give you a weekend of my life if you'll let me watch what you do and how you do things," because I wanted to goof around with how they climb trees and use some of that in my ropes coursework. Get a chance to go to firearm seminars. And so, some of the hobbies that I do, I can't do every week. And so I've learned the value of going to an intensive. I think there's a real value in weekend intensive workshops. A lot of times couples call me about their marriage problems, and based on what they describe, I say, hey, if you can find, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like that Trey and Leah do, or there's a group in Nashville, their theology's a little wanky, but their therapy's really good. It's called Marriage Helper. They have a 80% success rate. And so if you think about, if you could spend some time with an expert who's a subject matter expert and just spend a little bit of intensive time with him learning how to do anything, whether it's baking, cooking, crocheting, auto repair, I think that's very, very valuable. So if you could have a master class, and that's real popular with the younger people, master class. I see it all the time, on the internet. If you could have a master class on fixing a relationship where the two parties were basically incompatible, would you feel like that would be a valuable thing to learn from? It just means yes. This means no. This means you're not voting, all right? And so if you got a chance, if you think about the two most diametrically opposed people in a relationship. You've got the infinite, holy, pure God, and then you've got us. That's a pretty incompatible relationship, is it not? How did God bridge that gap? What did God do for reconciliation, for integration? What was God's strategy? Not just the idea of redemption. If you read the book of Romans, you read the book of Galatians, there's the word justified. Justified is used 28 times in combination between those two books. 26 of those times, that word means not guilty, and 2 of those times it means made righteous. Well, beside the fact that God, on a cosmic level, used the sacrifice of Christ to be our hilasteron, to be our propitiation, besides the fact that God fixed that so he could be just and justifier, what else did God do to fix the relationship between us and him when we are so different? He says, as the heavens are higher than the earth, my ways are higher than your ways, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. How does somebody so different than God get to be in a relationship with God? John chapter 1 and verse 14. And I think it's one of the two very significant theological passages in the Bible. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld His glory as the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John, if you look, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels, they basically ask and answer the question, who is Jesus and what does it mean to follow Him? Matthew from a Jewish perspective, Mark from a Roman perspective, Luke from probably a Greek or a Gentile perspective, and John from a philosophical perspective. And as John introduces his gospel, he uses this term that the Greeks would understand, the logos. The logos was the catalyst for all intellectual reason in the universe. It was kind of this cosmological thing. And John says, you've got this term logos, I'm going to give it a face and a name. And so the logos, the Word, is Christ. The Word is the Son of God. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by Him. There was not anything made without Him being a part of it. And so John takes this philosophical construct of the Logos and he gives it a name and a face. And then he says the Word, this mysterious deity, this entity of intellectual truth that the Greeks would have been all about, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That's the word dwelt is the verb form of the word tabernacle. And that's just fun to say, tabernacled. Literally it says the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. Now what's a tabernacle? We think in terms of this gigantic thing that's a house of meeting. The word tabernacle simply means tent. It's a great big tent, but it's a tent. The Word lived in a tent with us. Now that's really a different perspective, isn't it? You've got the eternal Spirit who put on one of these things and lived in it. Now go to Hebrews chapter 4. The Hebrew writer is going to expound on this a little bit. Hebrews chapter 4 verse 14. Seeing then that we have a high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold on to our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore boldly approach the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. John, and then the Hebrew writer says, you've got God leaving the heavenly realms, leaving the purely spiritual realms, and coming and living as a man. And as a man, this high priest that we have, who has ascended back to heaven and gone through the Holy of Holies in heaven and represents us to God. And the way He represents us to God is He's done humanity. He'd been tired. He'd been hungry. He'd been abused. He'd been maligned. He'd been betrayed. He's experienced depression and anxiety. Had interfamily conflict when his brothers thought he was crazy. He's had all the experiences that you can have, so that he says that when I present your case to my Father, He sits by the throne of God and makes intercession for us. He says it's not like He's not talking about humanity from a theoretical standpoint. It's an experiential standpoint. God fixed our relationship with Him, and one of the ways He fixed it was a fancy word we call attunement. He came to earth and experienced humanity not because He needed to understand us, but because we needed to understand that He understands us. Does that make sense? So when you start talking about solving relationships, whether it's conflict with your children, whether it's dealing with your spouse, whether it's dealing with other people, one of the big things is to change the dynamic of what we do with other people into what we call attunement. And attunement simply is, I get in trouble for using these little hand motions. This is my hand motion for cognitive dissonance. You don't know what I mean, do you? If you're trying to back a trailer and I'm doing this, you don't know what to do with that thing. Cognitive dissonance is where you have these two thoughts and they compete with each other. Well, the other famous hand motion I've got is most of our interactions with each other look like this, and they should look like this. When I'm in a conversation with you, when I'm trying to work out something with my wife, when I'm trying to deal with a client, my job is not to make them understand me. My job is to make sure that they feel like I understand them. I go from this position to this position. And in that position, I may have a chart on that. Yeah, there you go. So if you look at the bottom, the two little cylinders at the bottom, think about that being two guys looking through monoculars. We're looking downrange at something. Well, if I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, what are we doing? We're looking at each other. At any point that you can turn and say, hey, I'm going to look with you, not at you. Those, I'm looking this way, you're looking this way. When I do this, well, I can see what you see from the position you're seeing it. That's attunement. That's what God did. God came to the earth to see our lives from our perspective, not because He didn't already know it, but because He wanted to demonstrate to us that He knew it. If we could ever learn that simple skill in our relationships with each other, it would be dynamically transformational. I teach a class for the police. I'm part of a group called the Crisis Intervention Team. And in crisis interventions, it's a big push about how you train a police officer when he gets called to a scene and the person at the scene is experiencing a mental health crisis. Now, police shouldn't be sent to those. That's not what a policeman's trained to do. That's what a policeman ought to do. But guess who we send to those things? Well, if you've got a mental health crisis and it's 1:30 in the morning, you're not going to call your therapist. Number one, you're going to get his answering service. Or number two, you're going to pay a big check. If I leave the house at 1 in the morning from snuggling with Mrs. Jones, that's an expensive phone call you just made. Do you know what it costs to dial 911? Not a dime. And you dial 911, they have three options. They can send you a kid with a fire hose, they can send you a kid with a box of Band-Aids, or they can send you a kid with a badge and a gun. Guess who they send? The young man with a badge and a gun. Why? I'm scared of this person, and I can't make them behave. Well, guess what police officers are trained to do? Ask, tell, make. And that's the three levels you're going to encounter a police officer. He shows up and he'll ask you to do something and you'll do it. You don't have a problem. He'll show up and ask you to do something. You don't do it. He's going to tell you to do something. And if you do what he tells you, you're not going to have a problem. Well, if you go into third level and that young man shows up and says, hey, look, I need you to do this. I'm telling you to do this. You're going to do that, okay? Well, if you show up on a scene and a person is a mental health crisis, he's not breaking the law, he's not really a danger, and he's not really in danger, our young men and women who wear those badges don't have those skill sets. They're used to ask, tell, make. And so we teach this class, and the first skill we teach the class is try to figure out what's going on from the perspective of the person in the crisis. Because once you do that, you bridge the gap. You go from this to this. One of the examples we like to use in the class is, you get a call, you get dispatched, you go to Walmart, and there's a guy standing there in the middle of the store throwing green beans, just humming them everywhere. Excuse me, sir, can I ask what's going on? Well, I'm throwing green beans at this very large dragon I see. Well, I don't know that Walmart sells dragons in the pet department, and I don't know that they get out much. But if you look at this guy and go, there's not a dragon there, you fool, guess what you're going to do with this guy? Yes, there is a dragon. No, there's not a dragon. Yes, there is a dragon. You're crazy. You're going to fight. You're going to spray him. You're going to tase him. You're going to take him to the ground. It's going to be on TV. If you walk in, you go, oh, a dragon, that's a big red one. There's two of them. No, you don't go down there either. You don't enter in the delusion. You simply say, sir, I don't see a dragon. But I bet if you see it, it frightens you to death. Yes, I'm scared of this thing. So because you're frightened, because you see something I don't see, you're throwing cans at it, is it making the dragon leave? Nope. Well, it's not working. Maybe we should leave. Now, would you like to leave with me? Would you like me to call your sister? Or would you like to ride in the ambulance? You just gave him choice. You just gave him power. By definition, a person who is in crisis feels like they're out of control. And all you do to gain that control is instead of doing this, you do this. I'm not telling you that I agree with you. I'm not telling you I think you're reasonable. I'm not even telling you I think you're rational. I'm just telling you I understand how you see the world. Our job in getting along with anybody in any time is simply to demonstrate understanding of that person. Now, if you look on the chart there, you'll notice that there's a thing called love languages, needs, and attunement. We hear and we say that we love each other using different modalities. The official love languages from Gary Chapman are gifts, acts of service, physical touch, quality time, and words of affirmation. Now, if you've never done that little survey with your spouse, you've never done that with the person you're dating, you need to do that little survey, because you'll find out that our view of the world is not the same as everybody else's view of the world. If you're good at math, you think everybody else is good at math, and we are not. If you can draw, you think everybody else can draw. I figured out early that everybody else can't draw. As a little kid, my friends would come over, we'd play outside, it would rain, we'd have to go inside. What do you want to do? Let's draw. We don't draw. What do you mean you don't draw? You're a communist? You know, no, let's play board games. I'd rather stick a fork in my eyes, play a board game. But I like to draw. Well, I found out that everybody doesn't draw. People who are really, really good at math usually can't draw. People who can draw aren't really, really good at math. You find somebody who's good at math and can draw, that's called an architect, okay? They're good at both. I was so bad at math that when I called my algebra teacher from my master's program, I'd passed behavioral and inferential statistics. And I was so bad at math, I was so proud that I passed it, I called Dr. Long. I said, Dr. Long, this is Lonnie Jones. She said, the Lonnie Jones? I said, yes, ma'am, the Lonnie Jones. She said, and what correctional institution are we dialing from? I said, Miss Long, I'm not in jail. I just earned my master's degree. But if you think that everybody's family was like your family, if you think everybody's dad was mean, harsh, nice, if your view of the world is this, and my view of the world is this, we're never going to get along. We're never going to be able to solve problems. If you ever walk into a building thinking everybody shares the same perspective you share, you're probably behind the curve. Just for a simple exercise, when I count to 3, everybody please point to the right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Now, you see the problem there, right? If you were standing where I'm standing and you were looking in the direction I'm looking, point to your right. Now, all you did was put yourself in my place. You know your right from your left, and you know you pointed opposite of what you know is right. But from my viewpoint, you knew that right was in that direction, not because I'm right or smart. You just put yourself where I'm at. That's what Jesus did. I'm going to put myself where these people are at. And I'm going to look at life from the non-infinite standpoint. I'm going to look at life from the non-eternal standpoint. I'm going to look at life from a body that hurts, that gets tired, that gets old, that gets cancer, that gets disappointed, that gets hungry. And because I understand that about them, I know how to meet their needs. Well, when you understand another person's perspective, that the way they hear love is often the way they see love. I don't want to be goofy, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, but do you like to have your shoulders rubbed? I like to have my shoulders rubbed. I have little thick, tight muscles because I'm a little thick, tight person. And when my wife tries to rub my shoulders, she really needs to do hand workouts. Because I like you to squeeze my muscles until there's juice coming out of them. and she's just not that strong. She just can't do that. She likes to have her back rubbed and kind of feel like a granddaddy spider doing river dance on you. So I sit down in front of her, and I said, what are you trying to do, tickle me to death? She says, I've got this thing on my shoulder. Would you rub it? And she sits down in front of me, and she goes, ow, stop it. Why? I rub her shoulders like I like mine rubbed, and she rubs mine like she likes hers rubbed, and those two things don't work. Well, if you say I love you in a way that a person doesn't perceive it, what happens in that relationship? If your spouse is giving you lots of gifts, they probably like to get gifts. But sometimes we don't get that. If your spouse is always talking about, hey, let's spend more time together. Let's go for a walk. Let's sit on the porch. Their love language is quality time together. But if your love language is this and their love language is that, you miss it because we're not attuned to each other. We don't have this deep understanding of each other. And my job as a spouse, as a husband, as a parent, as a neighbor, as a friend, is to learn how to speak your language and attune to that. I don't know how many times, and I've done this in real time. You have a couple in your office, and they're not getting along, things aren't going well, and you ask the gentleman, hey, would you go sit in the lobby a minute? Let me talk to your wife. So just between me and you, do you think this man loves you? No. Well, why don't you think he loves you? He works 90 hours a week. We haven't been on vacation in 3 years. He's never been to a ball game or a dance recital. Wow, that's terrible. Go sit in the lobby. Bring him in. He comes in. Hey, do you love this lady? Yes, I love her. Prove it. I work 90 hours a week. I hadn't been on vacation in 3 years. I hadn't been to a dance recital or a ball game. What he thinks he's screaming, I'm doing because I love you and the kids, she hears you don't care anything about us. And it's simply because they don't understand each other's needs. They don't understand the way each other's wired. They don't understand the way they view the world. So that's the importance of attunement. Now, if you look on the other side of the chart, you've got this guy named Willard Harley. And Harley did a survey of 5,000 couples, that's 10,000 people, and he gave them a survey about explaining what your most important needs are. And you might be shocked to know that men and women have different needs. we're different people, Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And women view the world in ways that the men don't view the world. Ladies, this idea about your love language, men don't get hints. If you want us to know something, hold us by both our ears. Put your nose on our nose and tell us that. I opened the door the other day, and there's 2 steps that go out into our garage, and there's this big bag of trash in the exit of my house. I went, challenge accepted, and I broad jumped it. I'm still nimble. I can do those kind of things. My wife said, did you see the trash bag outside the house? I said, yeah, I jumped it in one try. If she said, hey, before you go to work today, will you take that black bag out to the garage? Oh, yeah, fine, I'll do that. I didn't know what the obstacle course was about. Maybe she wants me to be on Ninja Warrior. I don't know. Men don't get hints. You have to tell us sometimes. Now, it's not fair for you to say, well, if he really knew me, really loved me, I wouldn't have to tell him. Tell him once. He doesn't repeat the behavior, then that's his fault. But we have to have informed consent. So the idea behind needs is understanding that things that are important to me aren't important to you. Things that are important to you may not be important to me. In order for us to go from this to this, that involves spending time together, that involves some honesty, that involves some communication. So I'll take a breath after that introduction and see if that or anything else we've said has generated questions. And if not, we'll soldier on. All right, so look at 1 Peter. When Peter writes this chapter, and we get kind of wrapped up in this chapter sometimes, but there's 2 things that happen in this chapter. He's going to use a phrase, likewise, or he's going to use the concept in the same way. So in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1, he says, wives, likewise, be submissive to your husbands. Now, we get wrapped up in the word submissive, but we got to understand what the standard of submissive is. When he uses the term likewise, what does likewise mean? Same as, like that, like what? Well, if you go back into chapter 2, because the Bible wasn't originally written with chapter divisions, he talks about being submissive to the government, a slave being submissive to a master, and Christ being submissive to the will of God. And all of those involve how to keep peace, how to make reconciliation. Well, in the same way that a Christian obeys civil law, in the same way that a Christian, even in unfair circumstances, the biblical writers never endorse and they're never antagonistic about slavery. That's the world they lived in. And they said, if you are a Christian and you find yourself in an unfair situation like being a slave, this is how you behave. And then Jesus was in a situation that was ultimately unjust and unfair, and how did he behave? So wives, likewise, in the same way that this makes these systems work, you be submissive to your husbands. And if some of them do not obey the word, they without a word may be won over by the conduct of their wives when they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear. Your attractiveness, your beauty, your adornment should not just be outward, arranging of hair, wearing of gold, putting on fine apparel. Rather, it's the hidden person of the heart with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and a quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. When God tells women, this is the way you behave around men, it's based on the idea of that's what men need. Now, we're shallow, but we don't react very well when somebody tries to big boy us or somebody tries to boss us. I'm not saying that's right. That's just the way we behave. If you watch the guys in the room when I make this statement, most of us probably are okay if you don't like us, but you will respect us. Watch the guys' heads do this. I can get along with a lot of people as long as you treat me with respect. You don't have to like me. We don't have to be friends. I don't want to snuggle. I don't want to hold hands. Just treat me with a modicum of respect. Men come to my office all the time and they say, the only place in this town where I'm not respected is in my own home. And the biblical writer says, if you understand how men are wired, you learn to behave with them in a way that speaks their language. It's almost respect and honor and admiration is the lubrication that causes men to work better. When Adam and Eve are in the garden. And men by default like the path of least resistance. We like to abdicate our responsibility. Adam and Eve are in the garden, and while Adam and Eve are in the garden and they sin, and we know from the biblical account the woman actually sinned first. But when God comes to the garden, who does he talk to? The man. Why? He's the caretaker. He's supposed to take care. He's supposed to tend the plants. He's supposed to tend the animals. And he's not supposed to let his wife talk to a snake. But he abdicated that responsibility and followed her lead. And so when that happens, God tells Eve, your desire will be for your husband. And that's not a sexual desire. It's the exact phrase in Hebrew where God tells Cain, sin is crouching at the door and its desire is to have you. He uses this term of a Babylonian threshold demon. And he says, there's this monster and it's outside your door. And if you walk outside your door, it's going to overwhelm you. It's going to overtake you. He said, Eve, your propensity is going to be to overwhelm or overcome or overtake your husband. You can't do that. It's going to make things dysfunctional because that's the way I created him. He's created to be in charge, but he doesn't like it. Wives, be submissive to your husbands and you influence them without a word. You know what influencing without a word basically boils down to? It's the difference in influence versus power. And power and influence aren't the same thing. And he's telling the wives, if you understood how your husband ran, you would understand that your beauty, he thinks you're beautiful not because of your decoration, but because of your spirit. A gentle and a quiet spirit where you don't nag him, you don't boss him, you give him respect. Now, I'm not saying that's what we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to be wired. I'm saying that's we're wired. We tend to react that way. Now, if you keep looking at that, go down a couple of verses. Look at verse 7. Husbands, well, there's an interesting word again. Likewise, what does likewise mean? Well, in the same way that you've got the civil government, you've got servants and masters, you've got the Messiah, and your wife is doing this because of what you need, husbands likewise dwell with your wives with understanding. See, the key there is the wives treat their husbands this way because that's what they understand about men. Well, the key word here is, hey, husbands, you've got to live this way because of the way you understand your wife. Doesn't mean it has to make sense to you. Doesn't mean you have to like it. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Doesn't mean you have to think it's reasonable or rational. I know that from her perspective, this is important to her. And I don't get it. But guess what? It's important to her. So guess who it became important to? Once I understand that my job is to demonstrate that I get you from your perspective, there's 3 simple skills. You make people feel heard, you make people feel understood, and you make them feel accepted. When I communicate with somebody and they feel unheard, misunderstood, and rejected, I'm telling them something about their emotions. I'm telling them something about their value. I'm telling them something about their needs. And I'm essentially telling them, you're not important. I'm telling them, you don't matter. What happens when we deal with our children and they get in a highly charged emotional state, we deal with our spouses, we deal with an angry customer, we deal with somebody at church, we deal with somebody in a mental health crisis, we tend to be emotion dismissing. We tend to be emotion denying. You don't feel that. Or we tend to be emotion disapproving. You shouldn't feel that. When we tell people that your emotions don't matter and they're not important and you shouldn't have them, we're telling them you're not important enough to talk to me about this. Now, if you start dealing with kids that way and you deny, dismiss, and disapprove of their emotions, they go, well, I don't know what to do with these feelings I have. And then in the church, we tend to teach people that feelings are bad. No, anger management is not being angry. Anger management is learning how to respond to being angry. Anxiety management is not being anxious. It's learning how I behave when I experience anxiety. And so, but a lot of times when especially men, when our wives are in a highly charged emotional state, we don't like that. So we dismiss, we deny, and we disapprove. But our job is to say, hey, let me make sure I understand you. Now, once you demonstrate understanding, and if you have any conversation with anybody and you get a yes, sir, I don't see a dragon, but I bet if you see a dragon, it frightens you. Yes, I'm afraid. I quit arguing about the dragon and start talking about his fear. What happens when I start talking about his fear? Heard, understood, and accepted. And once I attune to that person, I have the ability to influence him. That's the same thing you do with a teenager in crisis. That's the same thing you do with a spouse who's angry. That's the same thing an elder does when a congregant is mad about something you've done. You make people feel heard, understood, and accepted. Questions about that? All right, we'll keep going on. So if you look at this list of his needs, her needs, and there's some of this that, in a Saturday seminar we do a little deep dive on. We're not going to do that because we're in a Sunday morning Bible class. But a man's top 5 needs are: number 1, sexual fulfillment; number 2, recreational companionship; number 3, attractive spouse; number 4, domestic support; and number 5 is admiration. Look at the list of women's. Her needs are affection, conversation, honesty and openness, financial security, and family commitment. Those 2 lists look a lot different, don't they? If you understand the man's list, it's basically play with me, look good for me, clean up after me, and tell me I'm great. That's pitiful, fellas. Okay, if you can't do that, you shouldn't own a goldfish. I mean, we are pretty simple. But the reason that doesn't happen for us is because the women's set of needs are a little bit different. See, a man's identity after he reaches puberty is his sexual identity. And men get married with the expectation, of sex. And like I said, we're in a Sunday morning Bible class, so we'll tread a little careful. The person who is least interested in sex controls that in the relationship. You think about how unfair that is. See, if my wife got to shop as much as I was interested in shopping, the Amazon people wouldn't even know where my house is at. Okay? If I got to hunt as much as she was interested in hunting, Bambi would be safe this year. Because she's not going to go out in the woods, she's not going to be cold, she's not going to get in the dark. Well, you get into a relationship, and early on in the relationship, it's pretty amorous and pretty physical, and everybody's young. As soon as there are small children in the house, and you have these emotional command systems in your brain, Yak Panskeep from the University of Kentucky identified the 7 emotional command systems in the primate brain. One of the command systems you have in your brain is called the energy czar. It maintains and modulates energy. A young lady in her mid-20s to early 30s with small kids in the house, the only thing she wants to do is rest. Can I get an amen? Okay, because you're on call the whole time, and so you finally get the Rugrats to bed. You give them a little Dimetap or whatever, and they Mama, I don't like this Kool-Aid. Just drink it anyway. They get to bed, and the husband says, "Hey, what do you want to do?" She says, "I'd like to go to sleep." And that happens. And then the man feels rejected. The woman doesn't realize how important it is to him. In order for her to be intimate, fellas, she has to have the perfect day. It starts with, did you remember to take the trash out or did you jump it? Did you do the dishes? Did you fold some laundry? Did you remember to walk the dog? And if you'll build that throughout the day, you're speaking her affection need. You're speaking her affection language. In order for her to want to be intimate, she has to have the perfect day. Ladies, if he can be intimate, he's had the perfect day. Just the way we're wired. But what happens with men is there's this expectation, and then as life overwhelms the women, that kind of goes away. After your kids leave home, there's a reversal of that. But right now, that's a struggle with young married couples. Number 2 in his set of needs is recreational companionship. Men build intimacy by doing. You'll notice when you dated, you went and watched him play sports. You rode in his bass boat. You rode in his golf cart. You went and walked the places that he hunted. You watched him do things. You watched ball games with him. And men, basically, we build our relationship by the things that we do with each other. And then we realize, hey, here's this creature that will do these things with me, and she's prettier than those gorillas I hang out with on a normal basis. And she smells nicer. And so we start building this friendship with you, and then when we get married, you start nesting and quit playing. And we lose our best friend. Hey, honey, let's go. Oh, I can't, the babies. Honey, well, we can't take the kids. And then all of a sudden you build this, she does her things, you do your things, and 18 years later when the kids leave home, you're living in the house with a stranger. Men date you because you do things with them, and they like recreational companionship. Number 3 in his set of needs is he needs an attractive spouse. Now, that doesn't mean you've got to keep the same dress size or you've got to have the same body mass index or anything like that. It just simply means that when we're dating, we never get to see you till it's time to be seen. Here she comes, Miss America. And about a month after you've been married, there's a fuzzy terry cloth robe and bunny slippers. And I didn't know she had one of those. You know, the first time I saw that one on Jackie, I said, don't move, baby. I think I can get it from here. I'm not being attacked. My mother gave me this, you know. And you take a lot of your time to present yourself to the world. You need to be that kind of presentation to your husband. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's how men are wired. And then the 4th thing that he needs is domestic support. Now, I'll give intellectual assent. You have a job and I have a job. You bring in money, I bring in money. But somewhere in the back of my mind, there's this implicit idea that you'll do things at our house that my mother did. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's expected. And I'm waiting for you to do those things. Even though we may have had some loose idea of it, I believe in my heart of hearts, you're going to do the things that my mom did. Now, is that sexist? Is that Neanderthal? Maybe. But if there's a bump in the night, who has to check it? My wife will poke me on the belly. I've had stomach surgeries, and she pokes me on the belly. Jonesy, wake up. What? I heard something. You got a pistol on your nightstand, go clear the house. She knows how to do that. No, but it woke me up. So you want me to find what woke me up? Yes. Found her right there. But no, I have to check on bumps in the night because I'm the dude. I'm in charge of all vermin, all bumps in the night. I get up, get the 45, through the house I go because I'm the guy. Well, I think there's some things about meal planning and grocery shopping, and not right or it's just an expectation. And then the fifth thing is men need admiration. It's okay to tease us, it's okay to goof around with us, but don't humiliate us in public. Don't question our authority when we're with your friends. Don't demean us. You read the story of David when he brings the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem, and everybody in Jerusalem is so proud of him, but he gets home and his wife despises him because she didn't like the way he behaved. He didn't behave kingly enough. And the Bible says that after she had that talk with him, his wife Michal, that he earned by killing 200 men in hand-to-hand combat, his wife goes to her grave without having a child. That means he quit having sex with her because of the way she treated him. Now, on the other side of that, I've got 4 minutes, right? On the other side of that is the woman's set. Her number one need is affection. And affection is not sex. Affection is, do you know my world from my perspective, and do you address it? It's not the stuff that we think they're impressed with. I can tell you where I'm speaking in 2027. Opens. I know when quail season opens. I know when deer season opens in Tennessee. I know when deer season opens in Wyoming. And I forget the trash truck comes on Mondays. See, I maintain this schedule for me, but I don't know this schedule for her. If I don't take care of the things that she needs, if I don't address her world, she doesn't think I love her. She doesn't feel like I'm giving her affection. Affection is not physical touch. Affection is understanding and attuning to your world. Did I help you with the kids? Did I do some dishes? Did I fold some laundry? Did I know your birthday? Do I know your favorite color? Do I know your favorite dessert? Did I come home and say, hey, I was at the store and remembered you like these chocolate bars? All those things, the stuff you used to do when you dated and you quit doing after you get married, they thrive on affection. Number two, their number two need is conversation. Men build intimacy by doing, women build intimacy by talking. And when you're dating and she's in your bass boat or your golf cart or your four-wheeler or whatever, you're in your comfort zone riding around doing guy stuff, she's talking to you and you're talking back. And she knows what you're thinking. She knows your hopes and your dreams and your aspirations. And in the old days, you used to spend 4 hours with somebody on a date, go home, talk to them another 2 hours on the phone. You get married, and it's, huh? Yeah? Okay. Nothing. It don't matter. And they have to have conversation. Now, I get it, guys. If we go hunting, we'll drive to the woods. He'll walk a mile that way, I'll walk a mile that way. We'll spend 2 hours in silence. We'll come back to the truck and we hunted together. If we go fishing, we get in a bass boat, we sit in a boat and never say a word. If I'm in a boat with you and you look at me and go, are we okay? One of us is getting in the water, okay? That's not the way guys behave. But when you're with your wife and you're hunting, you're fishing, you're golfing, we get married, the wives have built this friendship by doing this stuff. But while you were doing this, they talk. And guys, when we quit sharing with our wives what's going on in our heads, they feel disconnected from us. We don't talk to them or don't listen to them. Number three is openness and honesty. That simply means you got to tell them the truth. What you were looking at on your phone, who you were texting, what you spent, where you went, how late you stayed at work. The only thing that the Scripture says, hey, you can divorce and remarry, Jesus said if you cheat on your wife, if you're dishonest and sexually unfaithful to her, she can divorce you and remarry somebody else. Why? Because a woman can't live with a guy she can't trust. And then number three for her is financial security. She may have a job, she may have a career, she has a degree, but in the back of her mind, you're going to provide for the family like her dad did. And she expects you to be a hard worker. And fellas, it's disingenuous for us not to work and us not to provide for the family because we don't like our job or it's not the perfect job. She left, I heard the bell, she left her home, she left her last name to follow you in your adventure. And you better be willing to do what it takes to feed and clothe and house that family. And then the last thing she needs is family commitment. She's got to believe that you believe your number one responsibility on this planet is to God. And your number one responsibility to God is her. And if she doesn't believe that, those needs, now this is not a quid pro quo, but you can take those two lists and you can eliminate anything on this list and it'll affect something on this list. And once they start falling away, you get catastrophic system failure. His needs, her needs come from the idea that God understood us to demonstrate that we need to try to understand each other. I hope this has been useful and practical and beneficial. I look forward to studying with you at the worship hour. Thank you.